Clearly it's important that if we're going to engage and invest public money into this whole process, that those of you that do buy into the concept understand how we're going to assess the conditions on which we're going to pay out and the terms on which we'll be paying out. What I plan to do is just run through a few of the guidance for applicants type regulations. I should say at the outset that upon application for either of these competitions, but particularly the CR&D competition, you will receive a guidance for applicants document. Now, it is something akin to War and Peace, and I sort of apologise for that, but rest assured, everything you need to know will be in that document and you'll get it on registration. But to paraphrase it, and at least I hope not put you off taking the applications further, I'll skip through these fellows, they should all be hidden. The strategic criteria, David's mentioned and alluded to these already in a kind of quick pass over just now, but I want to emphasise the point that where we invest in business, where we invest in particular areas, we really do genuinely need to make sure that the capability exists. For example, it wouldn't be prudent for us to put a huge amount of specific money towards engineering solutions within food processing and manufacturing based at UK companies that make equipment for just such a purpose, because that engineering capability doesn't really appear to exist. Those of you that are involved probably have to go into Europe or further afield to find that equipment. So the capability to undertake the work and equally the capacity to match fund that R&D simply isn't there just now. For that reason, we've made this a fairly broad call that will certainly allow those few companies that do engage in that activity to buy into this, but it's not something that we can be as targeted and as specific about. So recognising the capability, also recognising the academic capability that exists to help the R&D go forward is very important. We need to make sure that the timing is right, that there is a clear opportunity for this to be taken forward, and we had one or two presentations over the previous workshops that suggest that perhaps the food processing manufacturing sector isn't as far advanced as, let's say, the automotive sector in its efficiency and its production lines, but it's ready to make that step change. Food has risen high up the political agenda now. For that reason, there is this particular focus and support. So the idea is right, the timing is right, and we can take that forward. As far as the market opportunity, again, we are going to keep emphasising that we are looking to drive profit to the bottom line of business. We want to make sure that the impact of this investment is going to have a strategic part in the recovery of the UK economy. So profit generation is good, it creates a money go round, fiscal revenue, employment and so on is all good and important for the UK recovery. We know from work done so far that the returns we've been getting are akin to about 10, 12 to 1, of that order. Every pound invested, the return to the UK economy is about 10 or 12 to 1. And this is across the piece, all technology sectors we work in. Of course, it's too early to understand what impact we're having in SAF programme, but as we get to the fruition of some of these projects, we'll have a good idea. So, addressing this point, that can technology transport make a difference? Will we add value? Will we allow projects to go forward that wouldn't otherwise be undertaken because of funding gaps, risk, policy and legislation that determines current access to markets and so on? That's an issue that we need to see articulated within any application, so that our assessors can have confidence in putting the proposal forward for support. The key dates, again, I apologise, just re-emphasise the food processing and manufacturing call doesn't open until June. The short, sharp project and feasibility studies, it opens on the 16th of April. It's likely that given the quick turnaround that we will have, the project closed, the assessment carried out by the end of June, and there will be an awards ceremony for those successful applicants that I believe will now be held on the 9th of July in the House of Commons somewhere. DEFRA are currently taking that forward. From the point of view of the CR&D call, the key date is the 11th of June. It will be emphasised later on. Please do register, make sure that you're in play, so to speak, that you get the documentation, and that you get your expression of interest in by the 18th of July. Thereafter, those successful applicants under the expression of interest phase will be invited forward to the full stage application process, whereupon further assessment will be carried out, and as David mentioned, final notification will be carried out by around about October, November. Within the application structure, it's key to remember the whole issue of scope. Does the project fit the competition call? Either David or Serena will go into details on what makes a good application, but fundamental to everything is this question of scope. We've got a broad scope here, but make sure you're addressing the point. There is a real art in completing applications. We mustn't shoehorn projects into a given call. To word your application is key, and again, you'll get support for that later on. The proposition, the business proposition, that's of course the key element as far as we're concerned in terms of seeing where the exploitable opportunity exists and the project and what you're trying to actually resolve within the whole food processing and manufacturing efficiency sector. As far as the team that you're putting together, of course we need to understand what your projects will entail. This is potentially a 3-year project. What are the work packages? What are you going to be doing in that time? What issues are going to be tackled in a phased manner? And who within the team is going to undertake that work? What's their credibility? What's their experience? What's their legitimacy for being involved in taking things forward? And of course, the project's value for money. Why should we invest? We talk about markets, we talk about the opportunities that exist for business, but demonstrate to us why your project is more worthy of support than the other man's. Okay? Highly competitive situation, we suspect, for this particular call. Don't want to put you off. We are likely to be funding, I'm guessing, a third of projects that come through, so it's a fairly good strike rate, hit rate, but we need the justification so we can take it forward. We need you to be reasonably concise in putting things together. The application form and expression for interest stage is only 4 or 5 pages, including a summary of the financial stage. Our assessors, and I think there might be 1 or 2 in the room, have not got time to go through and access a whole lot of web links. We really need to see it articulated within these 4 pages with the template that's laid out, what it is that's going to happen, what's going to be delivered. So it needs to be the right amount of information. It's maybe not the case of explaining it to Noddy, but don't assume that the assessor will know and understand the detailed science behind what you're trying to do. Put it in a language that is easy to understand. But don't fall into the trap of making great leaps of faith in the process of being concise. This point here, the jump between work package 1 and work package 2, there probably is a need to explain why you managed to progress the project, rather than just suggesting a miracle was going to occur. So, scope, not scopes in the bin, if it's taken forward, it will be reviewed, and it will be reviewed, provided it's got the right amount of information. If people suddenly find they've got 40, 50 pages of appendices and so on, that won't be accessed, it won't be read. So, don't do it. Collaboration. Collaboration is the key element of what we're doing here within the CR&D call. We really do genuinely believe that there is benefit to both parties from having this collaboration. It implies that there must be at least 2 partners. You can read here, for 2 partners, 1 partner, please come in, 1 partner must undertake at least 30% of the work. Okay? We want to make sure that there is genuine engagement here, that it's not the case, with the greatest of respect for our academic friends, that it's a philanthropic PLC that's giving sufficient money going forward to keep a department operating. Okay? Their work needs to be done on both sides of the camp, if you like. Where there are more than 2 partners, we've got some consortia where there's half a dozen to a dozen particular collaborators within a team. No one partner can carry out more than 70% of the work. Okay? Sounds strange, but just make sure that everybody is playing their equal part in the process. So what does it mean for grant? There's another criteria that we have here. Every partner has to take 10% of their costs in grant. Okay? So again, it can't be that a large multiple, a retailer for example, says, here you are, here's all the money to the academic team, go and get on with it. Okay? That's a subcontract arrangement. We need to see the collaborations going forward. Sometimes that can lead to a little bit of internal bureaucracy with the rolling up of the planes. We can find ways around that if it's a particular issue. But please make sure that in the cost structure calculations, everybody's getting 10%. We recognise that in these times of austerity, that SMEs struggle for cash flow. And for that reason, we will allow SMEs to receive up to 60% of their costs. These levels are dictated by state aid, and particularly in relation to the SME definitions. The higher education institutes, of course, they have not got a situation where they're able to put forward a contribution to funds, and they will receive 100% of its cost based on the 80% full economic cost structure that's delivered under the JES system. I assume academics here understand the JES system and will know how all that operates. I know Reading have been involved in a number of projects with us already. If you don't, I'm sure colleagues will know how it all works. Overall, we don't expect any particular project to receive any more than 50% of its costs in the form of grant. That's effectively the baseline laid down by state aid. But within that calculation, and I hope I'm not baffling you with numbers here, we mentioned that there is perhaps some areas of proof of concept that's very close to underpinning research. When David put up the technology readiness levels graph, where an academic is involved in the consortium and there is some underpinning work that needs to be taken forward in the very early stages, work package 1, let's say, that work package could receive grant of up to 75%. At the other end of the spectrum, if there's some element of product development that needs to be taken forward, that would be costed in and allowed, but only at 25% grant. Overall, we're expecting, of course, to end up with a final figure of 50%. There's a little bit of a round-robin calculation that needs to be done when you're filling out the finances, so give yourselves time to do that. Projects can span a mix and match of all of these things. If there are no academic partners involved in the consortium, then essentially that basic research falls out of the play. Okay, is that okay? Everyone's happy with that? Eligible costs, and this will apply to the feasibility study as well as the CR&D project. They're all fairly self-explanatory. The typical costs that you would see in any particular set of accounts. The one that often causes most headache is the overhead costs, what comes into play there. The eligible costs will include all those costs, again, typical costs that you would expect to see built into any particular set of accounts. Those that are ineligible would include effectively the work that's ongoing in relation to the current activity of the business, and things such as corporate entertainment, hospitality, and so on. These are straightforward. The guidance for applicants will have much more detail surrounding this. You will get these slides available online, so just refer to them. It shouldn't be overly complex. Capital expenditure is allowed, but of course it's the write-down value that's involved in the true cost. And if the equipment is genuinely written off over the period of the project, 3 to 5 years, then it will be 100% write-down. If there's a residual value, then of course that needs to be brought into play. So it shouldn't be complicated. It's okay. Ineligible costs as far as the competition is concerned, as you'd expect, VAT doesn't come into play. Interest charges, those businesses that are running on overdraft, get involved in HP interest, isn't there. The building in profits for subsidiary companies, again, is not part of a legitimate claim. And inflation and contingency allowances, so on and so forth. Project audit fees, they don't get included at this stage. So those are the costs as far as industry is concerned. As far as the academic partners, I'll be honest, this is a bit of history. Those of you in academia and your finance teams will know this inside out far better than I do. Refer to them. The funding will be administered more than likely by the research councils and their team, SSC probably, assuming of course that the research council, in this case BBSRC, have chosen to fund an element of your particular project. If they choose not to and allocate their funding elsewhere, then it will be TSB that's administering things. So precisely what's happening depends very much on the outcome of the assessment process. But make sure the JES system is accommodated, accommodates your financial considerations for each of the academic partners. The collaboration agreement. This is a point that I really do want to emphasise. That negotiating a collaboration agreement is not something that can be done last minute. These series of workshops that are taking place, we have 7 of them going on around the country just now. It's to give people a heads up and enough time to go and start building consortia, building arrangements and partnerships with potential collaborators. If these potential partners are, particularly these potential partners are large multinational firms, the legal advisors to those firms will probably throw their hands up in horror the first time they see the collaboration agreement that's been drawn up, unless of course they're used to this activity with TSB. So please make sure you engage with them early. We really don't want this process to be fulfilled to the point of an offer letter coming through when lawyers say this cannot go forward because we're not prepared to work with these guys in this way. Speak to them now. The monitoring officers will make sure before a project is taken forward that a genuine collaboration agreement exists. If it's a simple, straightforward agreement that David and Calum are going to split the profits 50-50 from any IP that's generated, that's fine, that's a collaboration agreement. We are not going to prescribe the format that that collaboration agreement should take. We have a template available that you can follow should you so wish. I think we'll manage to make that available, but start talking now. We know that there are a number of people who have been talking about this particular call since Innovate, our big conference in October, and they're progressing things fairly well already. So please just make sure that it's being taken forward and taken seriously. The process of assessment is going to be purely on the basis of the business proposition. Assuming that the quality of the science is correct and that we've got a quality line drawn, everything above the quality line in terms of the work that's going to be delivered will be judged on the business proposition. It will be undertaken by a team of assessors. Each assessor will look at 5 or 6 projects, and each project will be looked at by 5 or 6 different assessors. One of them will be certainly industry, one of them will certainly be an academic, the other 3 will be independent from all walks, and if necessary we will include a particular specialist, for example an IP specialist or a photonic sensors or an engineering specialist, depending on the nature of the proposal. They will be looked at, they will be ranked and graded according to the business proposition and the value for money. Once we get to the point of the final full stage application assessment, we simply run down through the scores that have been generated by all of these assessors and draw a funding line. Projects will not be ranked depending on project size or grant claim. It's on these 2 particular points. So we run down through the list of proposals. When the money runs out, the money runs out, and that's where the line's drawn. That said, sometimes the scores between projects can be fractions of a basis point. So what we do is we take the 4 or 5 above the funding line, the 4 or 5 below the funding line, and have a super panel assessment to make sure that we're comfortable in the way in which that assessment has been drawn together. So we get a true independent assessment of what's going on. Thereafter, offers are made, you have a month or 2 to accept that offer, and and then away we go. So we'd expect projects to be starting round about January. We deliberately held off launching this call to allow the sector to avoid the run-up to Christmas. We think that would probably be a sensible approach given the work that's undertaken at that time. Any other questions, any other points that you can't handle, certainly speak to ourselves, speak to the KPN, but there could be a lot. There's only 2 of us within the SAF-IP. There is a helpline and the details are here. If they can't handle it, they'll put it into our inbox for either Dave or myself to handle it. But I'm sure the KPN staff will be able to help as and where possible.